Welcome to the Shifting with Marlee podcast. I'm Marlee. Thank you for joining me wherever you are. All that I ask of you, the listener, is to have an open mind and an open heart. And in return, I offer you myself. Today, we're going to dive into past lives and how we can heal from trauma that happened in a past life in this lifetime. Because believe it or not, trauma from past lives can significantly impact us in this lifetime. For example, many of our fears in this lifetime are rooted in past lives because we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are eternal souls in a physical body. And each of our souls have lived many, many lifetimes. Through past life healing, we can relieve some of the burdens our souls have been carrying around. We can release some of the fears our souls have been holding on to. And then we can step into our highest potential in this life and live a life more in alignment with our soul and our purpose and help fulfill our soul's mission to learn, grow, and evolve. Here to guide us today on our journey into past lives is Michelle Brock. Michelle is a spiritual development life coach and hypnotist who specializes in past life regression. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful and I'm so honored.
I'm excited. Thank you for inviting me.
Before we dive in, can you let people know where they can connect with you?
Sure. You can find me on my website, which is Michelle with 2Ls-Brock.com. I'm on Instagram. I am Past Life Michelle. You can find me on YouTube as well. But yeah, I'm out there in the universe.
Awesome. And I wanted to share with you, Michelle, I worked with a past life healer 2 years ago, and it was through past life healing that this podcast was born.
I absolutely love that. That's like a phoenix from the ashes, reincarnation gives birth to something new moment. And I love that. That's amazing.
So yeah, this podcast was made possible because of past life healing. I've been saving this topic for 2 years now. So I'm really, really excited to talk about past lives. And I'll definitely share everything I've learned and about my past lives throughout the episode today. I'll get vulnerable.
I love it. Okay. How giving of you. That's awesome. Thank you.
So I'd like to start off with some basics though, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Can you please share with us how past lives can affect us in this lifetime and why past life healing is important?
Okay, so your past lives as memories exist in your unconscious. And your unconscious mind actually rules your behavior in ways that you might not even think about or understand. I just want to back up really quick. We're talking about reincarnation, right? I don't want to assume anybody knows. You get past lives because of the idea, the concept that, you lived in a body and you died, and that your consciousness, or what people call your energy or your soul, returns in a new body in a different form. And what I have discovered in my work with individuals is that we do carry a resonance or a remembrance of those past lives only unconsciously. So limiting belief systems, prejudices, behaviors that we can't explain, patterns we're repeating. So because it's unconscious, we can't really navigate it consciously. We have to kind of bring those memories up to the surface and make them conscious. Aha, that was the story of what happened to me before in a past life. And that's how I can let it go and release it. And then thereby prevent that past life from continuing to inform you and hold you back in certain ways from the life that you'd like to have in the future. So it's really about creating the future, letting go of the past so that you can have a future that's free of your past. That's kind of, in essence, the work that I do.
Yes, thank you. That was beautiful. And so past lives can have an emotional impact and even affect our personalities, right? And what about physically? Can past lives affect us physically in this life?
Yeah, I've found that we do carry different elements with us from past lives, but I'm actually often amused and surprised when I watch people experience a past life in which they are aware of the fact that they have a different personality. Maybe they're really introverted in this life and they're like, wow, I really was social and extroverted in a past life. I do believe that we choose our bodies and our circumstances and our parents, but it is possible to carry, birthmarks. I've seen people that have birthmarks that were connected to past life traumas and things like that. So we can embody things from a past life, but in general, we do choose new bodies. And sometimes that comes with new personalities, right? We're born under different astrological sun signs and moon signs and different things, so that, the essence of our soul is personality less, right? And our body is not our soul, but there can be clues, things that happened to you in a past life. And what you said was actually really important about it being emotional. It's not the past life that impacts you. It's the way that past life made you feel. So that's the resonance, that's the energy. It's always emotional, right? So it's the grief, the fear, the trauma that we carry with us. And also the positive things too, the joy, the love, right? So it's always emotional in nature, the healing that we do around past life work.
Wow, that's really profound. Thank you for sharing that. And for me, I wanted to share past life healing helped me understand myself on a deeper level and bring clarity to certain fears and habits and feelings that I've had my whole life. And it helped me accept myself and release judgment of myself.
Oh, that's so beautiful, right? It's like there are so many layers to our personalities, like who we are and what makes us tick, and what drives us and where we're feeling held back. And people are interesting, right? Their stories, even their stories from this life, their childhoods, the things they've overcome. And then what I do is I help you open the curtain a little bit wider, and those stories transcend this lifetime. It's kind of like, wow, I'm ancient, wise, and I've overcome so many things, and right, like learned so much and done so much. I've been old, I've been young, I've been everything in between. So it is about self-discovery and about understanding yourself. And what you said is so important: self-acceptance, your journey right now, where you're at, and what you still need to work on, which we all have more stuff that we're trying to learn and do. That's what life is all about.
Absolutely. And so how can we heal from these past life traumas?
So the technique that I use with my clients is called past life regression. And a regression is basically the idea of uncovering memories from the past. So, when you use this technique, the memories from the past that are coming up are memories from your previous incarnations. So by bringing up these memories from the unconscious, like I said, they make the unconscious conscious. I think it's a Carl Jung quote that says that unless we make the unconscious conscious, it'll keep ruling your life, right? Often it's just remembering that it's a past life that's enough to trigger that healing. Oftentimes people are more attached to certain things that they're carrying energetically, certain limiting belief systems or fears that have been blocking them, holding them back. But when we talk about these emotions as being energy, we're talking about energy medicine. We're talking about energy healing. So we're releasing that fear energetically from a person's being, and then it no longer informs them.
Perfect way to put that. And what does a typical past life regression session entail?
So when you're working with me, because I'm a life coach, we spend some time before we actually delve into the past life memories talking about, different things that have happened to you in this life, different things that are mysterious, things that you would like to understand more about. I ask people a lot of questions about their childhood, their marriage, their relationship with themselves, their relationship with any substances that they use, or are you depressed, or do you have anxiety? We kind of spend some time creating a map, at least, of, the things that they suspect might be impacting their life in some way in the past life, from a past life. And then we do the actual regression, which is usually about 45 to 60 minutes, obviously, depending on what comes up. And then we discuss what happened afterwards so that, they can start to make connections and start to realize like, oh, this is something that came up. And that's reflective of my relationship with my father in this life, or this is why I fill in the blank, right? So yeah, it's a pretty intensive process, but it can be 2 hours that completely changes your life and puts you on a different path. And I got into this work by way of my own journey through past life healing. So paying that experience forward to people on a daily basis is the biggest privilege that I could have ever even conceived of. So it's amazing.
And thank you for all that you do and all the people that you help.
Thank you.
How many sessions does it typically take to heal these past life traumas?
So I was actually working on some statistics because I'm working on a book, and I was coming through with, trying to like understand these numbers. 85% of my clients come once and never come back. Now, I know that's okay because my referral rate is also about 75%. So they send me their friends, their mother, their, whatever. So I do work with people sometimes who come to me. I have a few clients that come every year on their birthday. Depending on what's going on in your life, I do have clients that will come several times in the space of like 3 or 4 months and then never need to come back. It's pretty much as needed. But because it's such a powerful moving of a boulder away from a door, most people get what they need in one session, which is absolutely incredible to me.
You know what? And that was my experience as well with my past life healing. I only did 2 sessions with the past life healer I worked with 2 years ago, and we healed so much in just those 2 sessions.
Yeah, it's very dense. And in fact, if somebody does a session with me and then emails me 2 weeks later saying they want to come back, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Right? Like, give it some time because it's a very dense amount of information with a lot of layers to it. So most people do end up picking through the experience of a regression or a healing for weeks, months afterwards, right? So, it's work that you do after the regression that matters also too. If I meet someone who's like, yeah, I did a past life regression once, it was weird, I don't know what it means. It's like, well, find out what it means, right? Why did you just go, oh, that was crazy? That was like it's like some ride at Disneyland or something. No, go home, journal about it, think about it, make those connections. That's the most important part of it. And that does take a while. So
yeah, that was my experience as well. And is past life regression the only way to do past life healing?
No, there are many paths. There are people that do Akashic record reading, which that's the concept that there's a collective history embedded in all of our unconsciousness, the collective of all humanity. And that's a way to access stories from your past lives. You can go to an astrologer, a psychic, and they can tell you, who you were in a past life. For me, the past life regression is a lot more powerful than some of these other modalities because you're not having somebody else tell you who you were in a past life. You're experiencing it yourself. You're seeing it in your mind's eye. You're feeling it. You're hearing it. It's a multi-sensory experience. So for me, the experience is more powerful because that creates not just a belief, but then it's your truth, if that makes sense. Like I experienced my past life and that's my truth. And truth is such an individual concept as well. So for me, that's why I was drawn to the regression experience, because it is such an individual journey. All I'm doing is holding space for it. The healing comes from them because all healing is self-healing and the answers all lie within. You're your own past life authority.
Yes, absolutely. Right. You're empowering people.
Yes.
Holding the space and empowering them.
Absolutely.
But my question is, what about for those people that can't afford to work with a healer one-on-one? What are their options for past life healing?
So it's something that I've been working really hard on to kind of make it accessible. There are different meditations out there. I have a meditation that I can send people. I created an online course at one point, which is basically kind of a virtual session with me, where it's different video modules that kind of teach you what to do and how to focus on it. I'm writing a book on how to, have this journey and yourself and what you can take away from it. I work a lot, but I don't think I can actually do a past life regression on every person on planet Earth or have time. But there are, some people do have past lives in dreams. Some people have spontaneous past life memories. Children talk about past lives, and we often dismiss it in this culture, but they talk about things that are, I believe, our memories that they're referencing. A lot of people are really surprised when they do the regression with me at how just under the surface the information is. It's just kind of like, oh, that's where it was. And then once you know that's where it is, you can go back and go there on your own anytime you want. So, it's unique by individual. But there are lots of different ways to access specifically your own past lives and your past life memories, not just the regression.
Great. So there are avenues to make it accessible for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of people have dreams about past lives that they don't realize are their past lives. And they're kind of like, well, but I looked different. I had a different body and there were horses and buggies. And I'm like, do you think that might have been a past life? They're like, oh, right. But we're just not as open in this culture as we could be about that, because belief in reincarnation has been largely closeted in the Western world or dismissed by way of, different Eastern religions or thoughts that embrace it. And a lot of people believe that it's not part of the Judeo-Christian model for beliefs, but are surprised to learn that it is historically something that early Christians and Jews definitely believed in reincarnation. Most people do not realize that. So we kind of put it in this culture of like, oh, that's Buddhist or that's, Hindu or whatever, and not necessarily something that we embrace as part of our own spiritual or religious tradition, whatever that is.
And, that's a great segue, Michelle, because I actually want to ask you about a few particular patterns that I've seen come up for myself, my friends, my family members that I believe are rooted in past life traumas. Okay. Patterns that I've just seen in my life that I wanted to ask you about. And the first is religious trauma. So how does past life religious trauma show up for people in this lifetime?
I am super happy that you brought that topic up because it is something that I do see a lot as well. The most common way that religious trauma shows up is for particularly people who are either women in this life or were women in a past life who have been persecuted for having intuitive abilities, healing abilities, right? The whole idea of the witch. One of the big things that I'm dedicated to in my work is really kind of bringing back the history of the divine feminine and the way that feminine powers and intuition are kind of just innately human. But the idea of male and female as balance, which we have male and female within each of us, and we reincarnate as different genders over many lifetimes. So, the idea of gender as being fluid, that's being embraced today. I'm like, of course, right? Because we've had so many past lives as, different things, but the idea of the yin and yang, that there's a specific feminine energy. I do get a lot of people that had past lives where they were hanged to death as witches. And they're like, oh, I'm trying to write a book on astrology. And for some reason, I'm really scared to turn in my manuscript. Well, yeah, because unconsciously they're like, oh, well, I'm going to go be burned at the stake and they're going to burn my house down and persecute my family for having the audacity to talk about esoteric or spiritual traditions. I do see that, but I see that in men as well. Men who, and when I say men in past lives, who had to be militant or uphold some sort of patriarchal standard because that was what was accepted of them culturally. So it's not just the witches, it's the people that burn the witches, right? Or I had one client one time, this was really, really interesting. And he grew up in a really religious Catholic family and he left the church, and it was this huge source of trouble for his family. I believe that he was originally from South America, so his family was very, very deeply religious, and he's just like, I want nothing to do with this. And in his passive regression, he was a monk who had joined an order because he genuinely wanted to connect with God and meditate in the garden and be a scribe and write and study religious texts. And he ended up having to do things as a monk that were about power and control that really upset him. So he had this association with like church means they're going to try to control me, control other people, right? So once he was able to kind of see that that was a past life story, he was able to revisit the religion of his youth in a way that was without that trauma, where he began to start to see the traditions as beautiful and the whole spiritual kind of context of it in a totally new way. So that's actually a kind of a profound example of that, how it shows up. But like I said, there's a lot that has happened throughout history. And before I started doing passive regression, I always thought I'd be a history teacher. And I guess I kind of am, like in a different way. It's kind of funny. But with the idea of politics and control, particularly when you look at Western society, was really about quelling that divine feminine as this pagan or not the patriarchal God, right? That we would like to embrace, that helps us, kind of inflict our patriarchal beliefs on these wild women that we can't control. I think the month of May that we're recording this actually has a Friday the 13th. And I do epic Instagram posts on Friday the 13th about it's the day of the goddess, right? Like where they kind of, it's the day where fear and witches and black cats and black magics. No, it's the day of Freya, the goddess, right? The day that, pagans worship the divine feminine. So kind of making it an unlucky day was their way of kind of like stifling that belief and getting people to believe that, the sun god or the patriarchal God figure was correct. But I think that there's a huge trend today away from organized religion into personal spirituality. And you can do that in the context of your religion. You can do it outside some religions allow you to do that easier than others. The one that I grew up in, it's their rules or no rules, right? But I think it's possible to kind of look at spirituality as an individual personal journey, regardless of your religion, your religious affiliation or background. That's my take on it.
Thank you. You were just speaking to my soul just now. So thank you.
I'm glad. Yeah.
And, that brings me to my next point, because trauma resulting from organized religion is unfortunately still fairly common in this life too, not just in our past lives. So my question is, what is the difference between trauma from this lifetime versus from a past life in terms of how it affects us?
Well, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that when you look at our past in this life, even the things that happened yesterday, right, or in our childhood, I don't look at that past as this like kind of faraway arc. Our past lives are this faraway thing that existed outside of that arc. Our past informs us today, and that includes our past lives. So a lot of times you will see issues or events happening in your childhood or at some point in this life that will trigger those things that you're carrying from a past life. I believe that's by design. I believe that's part of our soul contracts we have with ourselves. It's like, I'm going to be somebody who, in a past life, I had a lot of female wounding, whether from oppression, arranged marriage, rape, whatever, right? And then in this life, have a sexual trauma that happens to them in college, and it makes them into an activist because it triggers that unhealed wound. Things come up so that we can heal them and so that we can confront them with the tools and the knowledge and the learning that we have today, right? We didn't always have the tools to heal things that happened to us in a past life 200 years ago, 300 years ago. And I believe that that's part of our evolution as we move through different eras of humanity. It's like we have tools today. We have freedoms today we never had. We have new levels of equality, which are not even close to being actual equality. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're getting there. There's an opening and there's more we can work with. We have to do more, but we're not as stuck or trapped as we were in the past, if that makes sense.
It does make so much sense. That just blew my mind. Thank you for connecting that. Right. Thank you.
Mm.
And so I want to share, I guess I'll get a little vulnerable. So the reason I asked about past life religious trauma is because me and all my siblings actually have deep rooted past life religious traumas. And that shows up once I realized that showed up for each of my siblings and myself in different ways. And I believe our souls chose to come together as a family to help each other heal from this. And I think our souls chose parents that were open and accepting and didn't push any organized religion on us which I'm thankful for, because I think my siblings and our souls maybe needed a break from organized religion in this lifetime. That's just a theory.
Yeah. That is really insightful. And 100%, I just met you today, but I'm going to tell you 100% that's more than likely true, that you chose parents that were going to allow you more of that freedom to explore your own beliefs. And, the fact that you have similar trauma as your siblings, those trauma bonds brought you together as a family unit in order to kind of help each other learn and grow and heal. I have the opposite experience in this life. Like I said, I grew up in a very conservative Christian religious environment where,
Wow.
yeah. And I'll just say, I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was raised as a Mormon. And that is a very specific conservative religion where it's like, these are the things that we believe and these are the things that we don't. And I do know a lot of really wonderful people who are Mormons. My parents are still very, very devout. I know some people who aren't so good people who are Mormons either too. Like, it doesn't really have, to me, it's like your religion doesn't make you a good person or a not good person. I think that there are different elements, but looking at the reason that my soul chose this family, right, and this circumstance, I think informs my work a lot, because I'm able to really understand people who don't share my beliefs on a different level. And I'm able to kind of connect with people who grew up in different ways than I did. I feel like it serves me all the time. I mean, I've actually lived in 7 states and 5 of those were red states, actually. So, very conservative. I've lived in the Bible Belt. People are like, well, my religion doesn't allow me to believe in past lives. Okay, great. Fine. But do you believe in an afterlife? Do you believe in, yes. Have you had dreams about people after they've passed? Well, yes. Now that you ask, I have, right? So I think that we're so focused on our differences and not as focused on the commonalities and the things that are universal to the human experience that are, like I said, individually spiritual, that have nothing to do with religion whatsoever. So we choose our circumstances to optimize our growth and to help us better live our life purpose. So for whatever reason, that was your journey in this life. And I picked the opposite one. And here we are on a podcast together.
Yes,
right?
Here we are. Yes.
Isn't that a beautiful thing? It's amazing.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I have like tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share, me and my siblings kind of different experiences because for one of my siblings, I see their past life religious trauma show up in anger and resentment and bitterness in this life. And they are forcefully against all organized religion and also kind of closed off from believing in anything or experiencing any type of personal spirituality or trying anything outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what you're talking about are really triggers, right? And triggers are so connected to past lives, but they're connected to things in this life, and actually I have a significant other who gets so triggered by anything religious, like, even church bells. He's like, oh, time to go pray, or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's your trigger because he had some very specific negative experiences kind of connected to that. And you have to be responsible for your own triggers, right? If something's triggering you, it's because there's something that's unhealed that's inside of you. So anybody who's even militant or completely like, I don't want to know anything about this, like, okay, you're triggered, right? So this is not easy. This is work we do over many, many lifetimes. I mean, we're as many triggers as I work on with myself. I always find more, right? But that's very, very common when you have a lot of very negative experiences. You're just like, you throw up the wall. You're like, I can't, I don't want to see it, don't want to hear it. And it's because it's hitting them in an uncomfortable way, but that's because it's unconscious. So if they could be like, well, you know what, when I was a monk in the 13th century and I was disemboweled for my beliefs, that's why I get triggered. So I can help people kind of understand more about their triggers so that they're not these just knee-jerk emotional reactions that kind of come out of nowhere. It's understandable and very common, but it makes a lot of sense, right? It's like, where's this coming from? Generalized anxiety around religion, right? We don't know the story. If you know the story, you can assign that story to it. And I always make terrible jokes about, death and dying. And, it's like a kind of I guess, an occupational hazard. But one thing I always tell people is that the Spanish Inquisition didn't go so well for me. I could have used, I could have done without it. It's just, I'm still a witch. I'm a good witch. I've always been a good witch, but, being persecuted for having certain spiritual views, but specifically doing work as a healer is something that I've done in past lives that didn't go so well. Midwife in the 17th century, they weren't, Yeah. So I can laugh about it, but it's because I've done a lot of work around it, if that makes sense. It's no laughing matter for most people.
Absolutely. And I love that perspective. Thank you for connecting that. And for me, I'll share, my experience of past life religious trauma in this life. I've always been distrustful of organized religion. And I've never felt comfortable being in any place of worship, like a church or a synagogue. And this is from birth, Michelle, as long as I can remember, which is how it's from a past life, right?
Yep. Yes.
And I used to be judgmental of others who bought into organized religion. And so for me, when I did past life healing and discovered that I had religious trauma from multiple past lives, I felt very seen, and I felt a sense of relief and acknowledgement. And through past life healing, I was able to release the judgment of others that I had been feeling and holding on to. And it allowed me to step deeper into my personal spirituality, which is just such a big part of me today.
Oh, I love that. And you're right. Like the fact that it showed up at such a young age meant you brought it with you into this life. But it is about understanding and seeing it from a bird's eye view. Then you're not in it. And like I said, the triggers are very real, right? And being judgmental of people who don't follow any religion is the same as being judgmental of people who feel like they need to go to church for 5 hours every Sunday and pray, right? Like judgment is judgment. Everybody's on their own path, and what works for one person might not work for another, and like I said, I think that we are starting to be more open to other cultures, ways of life. Part of this is due to technology, in my opinion. We're able to connect more deeply with people who have other experiences on the other side of the world, emotionally, as if they're happening to us. But I remember when I did my past life training, this was like 17 years ago, there were actually several Catholic nuns that attended the workshop that was training, in past life regression techniques. And they said, the people that we serve in our parish are asking us questions that we can't answer. So we're here to learn. And I just thought that was amazing. I remember that. And even too, just back in like the early 2000s, that was gangster, right? Of them, truly. But they were like, people are saying we're having a dream about, and they're like, maybe past lives. And I didn't realize this, but actually Christianity actually had as an official tenet reincarnation up until the year 462. And that was when Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity and the Roman Empire became the Holy Roman Empire. And because Christianity stemmed from Judaism, there were all these different sects. And, if you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, you'll see some of these are like, these people believe this, and there's this book and that book. So what they had to do was, because there was a political affiliation that had this religious connection, they needed to codify all the rules. Like, we need to all get together, and all of you different people living off in different parts of the Roman Empire, which was enormous. I think it spanned like 23 countries or something like that. Enormous amounts of people with different skin colors and backgrounds. And they took a vote over what they were going to leave in the official tenets and what they were going to get rid of. And reincarnation, because it stemmed from Judaism, you can't understand Kabbalah and esoteric Judaism without really understanding that reincarnation is a part of it. They voted reincarnation out in 462. And the legend, the story is that it was Emperor Constantine's mother's idea. And her thinking behind it was, well, it'll be a lot harder to control people if they think that they have more than one chance to get it right. So it was really about social control, follow the rules, pay your taxes. The king is like the god. And that she was thinking in that way of like, how can I protect my son's power? Reincarnation directly challenged that. So a lot of people that are staunch Christians are really surprised when I tell them that early Christianity, actually, reincarnation is mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls several times. So,
wow. Thank you for that history lesson. That's fascinating.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. And, it's interesting before that you brought up that you commonly see past life religious trauma as persecution in a past life, because I actually discovered through past life healing that I was persecuted by different religions in multiple lifetimes for speaking up against injustices.
Yes.
And so that has also shown up for me in this lifetime, which I realized through the past life healing I did, as a fear of self-expression and a fear of being seen. And so that's the next thing I want to ask you about, because I also see this fear of speaking their truth in so many people.
Yes. Yeah. But it's interesting. These times today, and you actually invited me to do this podcast and sent me your list of questions before this leaked memo to the Supreme Court came out about the abortion issue. It's interesting how we, as much as we think this shadow side of our politics and our history in connecting politics and religion are gone. And it's amazing how quickly the shadow shows up, that it's still there. And regardless of how you feel about abortion and women's right to choose, it's just noticing that this is coming up again. These times keep dragging out our inner activists, right? The Black Lives Matter and the whole COVID, is it a hoax, and disinformation and this and that. We think that we've evolved a lot as a society, but we're like, oh, I'm like looking at this. I'm like, are we back in the 15th century? I don't know what's happening here, right? As far as we've come, we still have work to do. And I believe that these shadows come up in order to trigger us and expose us so that we can do our own individual healing, which then contributes to the healing of the collective. And part of what makes me so grateful to do the work that I do is every time I work with a person, I send that person out to the world, and they're going to impact their family, their friends, their community, the people at work. And, the shift that they were able to make and their healing is going to trigger the healing, of all the lives that they touch, and eventually all of humanity, right? Like, we're doing the best we can, 1 minute we can. But yeah, particularly, this is a feminine wounding about using our voice, having our rights. You can't tell us what to do, right? You don't have to be a history professor. And like I said, I'm talking about mostly like European, Western history, quelling women's power and their voice. A lot of women have throat chakra issues also too. Something like 40% of women over 40 have some sort of thyroid issue in this country, which is absolutely incredible. But that, to me, that chakra is about speaking your truth to power, right? So we're all kind of collectively dealing with this, and it's coming out as this collective rage, right? Don't tell us what to do. I mean, I just think that this is happening for a reason, and it's triggering us so that we can speak out more about what we believe. But at the end of the day, it's about learning to respect each other and our own individual paths, right? And not trying to have power over certain groups or tell other people what to, that's my opinion about how we're evolving and what we're doing. It's not about right, it's about individual choice, if that makes sense. There's just a lot happening right now on planet Earth. These are all patriarchal issues. These are all, if women were at the helm, would we have the same problems? No, we would probably have different problems, but we would not have these same problems, in my opinion. So, but that's why many men have past lives as women and women have past lives as men. They're different experiences that are complementary to each other.
So you see this fear of self-expression and this fear of speaking up more commonly in women?
Definitely. Yes. It's definitely something that I do see in men as well, but men, particularly men who are not minorities or not LGBTQ, they're born with a microphone in their hand. Oh, what do you think? Speak up. We do this. It's cultural, right? What we're learning to do is undo these cultural norms with the way that we approach feminine power, masculine power. We need each other too. I love men, right? Right? We need men. Men possess, different qualities that are our foils, right? And like I said, there's more conversations happening about gender today that are different than, we've ever had, where you actually get to just, what do you identify as a gender? Or do you just not want to be any gender? That's an amazing choice to have, right? Where it's kind of like, I have qualities of both, or I can't pick one. Indigenous cultures have always honored that. There's something in Native American culture called Two-Spirit. I don't know if you've heard of this, but they basically were people that would be considered either trans or gender fluid, gender neutral today. That's always been a part of that culture. And those individuals were highly regarded as spiritual healers, that they had the qualities of both, and that made them almost a little bit more of an ascended version of what it means to incarnate as a human. If we could take that approach more in our life today, I think that we would solve a lot of the us and them problems, let's call them, in our society today.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And expressing ourselves and our truths is just so important. And have you been able to help people through past life healing overcome this fear of self-expression and fear of being seen and fear of speaking up?
Absolutely. It's actually one of my favorite things about being a life coach. I do stay in touch with a lot of the people that work with me. I've seen people go on to write books. I have a couple of clients who've written movies, TV shows. I work with a lot of actors also too, that step into roles or new phases of their career, or even people that are struggling with a bad divorce that learn to find their voice and stand up for themselves, right? So there's a million different ways that it can manifest, that fear of not speaking your truth or standing in your power. But I have noticed that it is a specifically feminine wounding, at least in these times today.
That's really interesting. And for me, because I worked on healing my past life fear of expression, first through past life healing. So step 1 was past life healing, but then step 2 to healing my fear of self-expression was through action. So doing this podcast, letting myself be seen and heard over and over and over again. And the fear slowly faded away in layers.
Isn't that amazing that once you stepped out of that fear and put it into action, that you were able to transform, like I said, it's like a phoenix from the ashes moment where like through your own healing, you were able to kind of step into your power. And this podcast is probably a really important guide for helping others do the same as well. The ripple effects for your healing probably can't even be felt. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to put it into action. I think that's really well said.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's really beautiful. And the crazy thing is, Michelle, I know now that part of my purpose in this lifetime is expressing myself authentically and sharing my perspective. but I had deep rooted past life fears standing in my way.
Yeah.
And in order to align with those parts of my purpose, and in order to start this podcast, I had to do that past life healing work. And I'm just so thankful that I had the opportunity to do that work 2 years ago.
Amazing. Amazing. I believe that if everyone everywhere could experience their past lives, there would be world peace. There would be greater understanding. There would be like more activism, more love, more connection. So the fact that you put that into action is such a beautiful, beautiful gift. And like I said, of all the people that it's going to touch and inspire and impact moving forward, like I said, that's what it's all about. It truly is.
Yes, I agree. And I do feel like my spirit guides worked behind the scenes to make that past life healing happen for me 2 years ago.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I always tell people that the day you do a past life regression or a past life healing is a really bad day for your spirit guides to not come to the office, because that's literally their job is to help you, to guide you, steer you towards opportunities for your healing, growth, and understanding. So know that they are conspiring on your behalf. And if you happen across this podcast, it wasn't an accident. It was definitely for a reason. Your guides brought you here. So pay attention, and anything in that arena, right? Like, we are so deeply held by our guides, by the collective energy of us all working together on planet Earth to learn how to be better and do better. When you can tap into that perspective, you never feel alone. You understand that everything happens for a reason and that we're all in this together.
Yes, I agree. And, I think, Michelle, part of living a life in alignment with our soul and our purpose, and not living a life run by our fears and traumas, means being more connected to our intuition and trusting the intuitive guidance we are receiving and trusting our spirit guides, right? And in your work as a guide and healer, I'm sure that's a really important part of your work. So can you maybe give us some tips and tools for connecting with our intuition and our spirit guides?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I do work with people's spirit guides when I'm doing past life regression, because that's who it's coming from. Your spirit guides are the ones who show you your past lives, right? So being more connected to your guides and your intuition, the biggest part of that is just by deciding you want to, setting the intention and be open, right? And like, oh, well, my spirit guides were supposed to show me in XYZ, I was supposed to see 1111 and get pennies, and I got a feather and I won the lottery instead. It's like, well, don't be attached to how, when, right? And just to be open to it. But it's really just a matter of deciding, I'm going to set an intention. I would like to understand more about how my own intuition works. I'd like to get to know my guides. There's a lot you can do to invite meaningful dreams where you can actually get more insight into your life. Journaling is a powerful way to really kind of trigger the unconscious mind to start thinking in different ways. And then you're noticing signs, symbols, miracles, things that other people might dismiss as just coincidence, which, I don't believe in coincidences. I call them synchronicities, right? So the first step is really just setting the intention and deciding it's something that you want to do and bring more of into your life.
Thank you. I totally agree. And that was my experience as well. It was like 2 years ago when I started meditating every day and setting the intention to connect more with my intuition and my spirit guides, that, things started to flow and that started to happen. And our intuition and our spirit guides are always talking to us, right? But it's up to us to slow down, get quiet, and listen.
Yes, that's right. Our job is to quiet the noise. And like I said, just to be open. It's hard to do in our modern world. We're in front of so many screens and we're running and going and doing, so just really giving yourself that time to just listen, that stillness, which meditation practice can absolutely do. A lot of people ask me, what's one simple way I can actually create an enormous spiritual shift in my life? I'm like, meditate for even 5 minutes a day. That's the most powerful practice the fastest way you can create a meaningful shift in your life. It doesn't even have to be formal. Some people like get all fancy, like with a mantra. Sit, breathe, listen, check in with yourself. It's as simple as that.
Meditation is the answer, right?
That's true. It is. Yep.
I have one more past life trauma pattern that I've seen that I want to ask you about. And that is issues around self-worth. And I see that a lot in people in my life. So how does past life trauma impact our self-worth in this lifetime?
Yeah, I think that discovering not just that you had a different body in a past life, but that in essence, who you are has nothing to do with your body. That you are this beautiful, transcendent, eternal, immortal soul that has this vast, knowledge and experience, right? I think that a lot of times when we focus on self-worth, we think about either our looks, right? Our body or our achievements or our conditioning that we should be more like this or we should be more like that. Just really giving that bird's eye view of like, this body is just temporary. So why am I picking on, what my skin looks like or what size dress I'm wearing or my feet are ugly or whatever, right? It has nothing to do with that, right? So overcoming that sense of identity, and actually this is what my book is about, is really changing the way that you identify yourself. You're not your gender, you're not your looks, you're not your ethnicity, your skin tone, your gender, all of that. So really learning to reconstruct how you identify can really, really help with those feelings of self-worth, because it's more about a big picture point of view. But there are a lot of people who are old souls who are like, I'm here to change the world and I'm supposed to be accomplishing this, and this. And I'm supposed to have written a best-selling book before I was 30. And it's like, well, chill out. You are this wise soul on a journey over many lifetimes, but you're also a girl in a body trying to navigate the complexities of all of that and what that entails too. So it's about perspective and compassion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this is really profound. And that's why I wanted to have you on today to bring that past life perspective, because it really changed my life. And I want to share that with people. And I want everyone to do past life healing.
Me too. Yes. It really is powerful. Like I said, that perspective shift. The moment where my clients look down and they're in a different body, wait a second, who is this? And then that moment, I guide people through the moment of their death where their consciousness separates from their body. Those two moments alone are absolutely life-changing. And then all of this other stuff that comes between, all of the stories, the multifaceted journey through history, all of that. It's really, truly one of the most amazing healing techniques ever. And like I said, it's fascinating. I said this to you before. I don't ever have a boring day at the office. It's impossible.
Michelle, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom. I really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like I could talk about past lives all day. My final question for you, though, what is your vision for the future of humanity in the world?
So, wow. Equality. I think that that's the one thing, because we do reincarnate as different bodies, forms. If we could really just understand that we're so similar. All of these differences that we have are just perceived. And that if we could really just embrace each other as individuals, but understand the universal elements to our human existence, there would be no hate. There would be no war. That's my hope for humanity and why I get up and go to work every day. But like I said, we still have a lot of work to do to get there, to have true equality. But I think that that's where we're going. It's where we want to go, and it's where we need to be.
When we talk about past life healing, we are talking about soul level healing. Each of our souls has a story to tell. Past life healing unlocks that story and offers us a way to release fear and gain understanding and compassion for ourselves and our fellow humans. I'll end today with a quote by Michelle. We are born into a kind of forgetting. Our task is to remember who we are. And when you heal the past, you open the future.